Welcome to Inside Integration. My name is Chris. I am joined, as always, by my friend and partner, Jason.
What's up, everybody?
And we were kind of kicking this around. We've had some events lately. And I think today what we're going to talk about is what gets you to show up for an event. So, in other words, you're a dealer, we're reps, there's manufacturers out there. What would get you out of your van, office, beach house, whatever it may be, and what would get you to come to an event? Whether that's an expo, whether that's a national trade show, whether that's maybe it's HTSA, maybe it's ProSource, maybe it's HTA or whatever it is. Maybe it's the Sonance Design Center. What would make you get out and go, right? Like what's the for lack of a better word, like what's the carrot, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's a great question. I think it's something that we struggle with as reps because there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this
And we're gonna pull back the vent curtain here a little bit, and we're gonna air. It's not it's not we're not here to air grievances or anything like that. But to give you in the audience some perspective, there is a lot of heat from vendors to want to build relationships with the dealer network at large, right? Like it behooves the vendors to have those personal connections, and it behooves the dealers to have those connections as well, because you've got a person at vendor X or Y that is really important to your business, and you've got the guy or the gal over there that can help you out, and that feels good. And guess what? You will continue to support that relationship because it's mutually beneficial for everybody, right? So
yeah.
vendors want to capture that as much as reps want to capture that as much as dealers do. So that there's a symbiotic nature to that cycle, but there is a pressure to maintain that and to keep those embers burning and to fan those flames, and it can be challenging at times to always want to be the hey, happy to see you, love to get you in my door. I don't always have time for this. Thank you very much. Right.
Sure, sure. And again, this is a podcast disguised as a poll, or a poll disguised as a
Right,
podcast, whichever way
exactly.
you want to
Where
say it.
so subterfuge is the word, yeah.
Yeah, and the one question on it is why the fuck don't you love us? Because
Please
that's
hold me.
right, right. It's really it's kind of and it comes up because I went to an event this week. We talked about it last week or whatever, and I went to an event this week with Sony at their digital media production center, and obviously, being close to LA or LA adjacent is kind of a wonderland of opportunities for this kind of thing. And
In LA.
in
Yeah,
LA,
yeah, there you go.
you want to take the 101 to Topanga, yeah,
The
that's
Californians,
it's my life every
that's
day.
it's a real thing, everybody. If you've never been there, all you'll be in a Saturday Night Live skit just like that. You start talking about the roads
Stuart,
you were on. Yeah,
take cold
exactly.
water.
What
Um,
are you doing here?
what are you doing?
Okay,
One of
get
the best,
developed.
yeah, one of the best ones, in their entire run. But I went to this event. Obviously, we're not the rep firm in this territory, but we have a relationship with Sony. We know, our friend and pal Russell. I got invited to, essentially help connect cables and take some flattering video of the man himself. So I got to experience this, and I thought it was again, like as a dealer, like if I got invited to this thing, I would be super stoked because there's a virtual production stage that you can see. There's, you can hold an Emmy, like all all these things that we mentioned on the last
Right.
show. Um, and it's fairly convenient. Like anything in LA, it's hard to get to, right? Like it's not easy unless you're located real close, unless you're in that canyon, or whatever else, right? Like everything, everybody who got there was probably an hour to an hour and a half at least, right? Depending on, it was 2 hours from me from OC. Everybody else that got there was probably, a little bit more reasonable than that, but still, it's a pain in the ass, and you're sitting in LA traffic. And my clutch knee is on fire today, a couple days later, still from dealing with that. But it was, I thought it was a really good carrot because again, this is something that you're probably never going to see. And not to ring Sony's bell any more than we usually do, but given their given their motion picture pedigree, like it was something that they can only do, right? Like
Yeah, they've
you
got a
know,
footprint that it
yeah,
is like, "Oh, you mean I'm actually gonna get to see behind the veneer that I see Sony from?" I mean, as a former employee and certainly mega geek, uh, all of that stuff was so, like, rewarding. Like, the social currency or, like, the ego payback where you're like, "Oh, yeah, like, I work here," kind
yeah.
of, you know? Like, that
Super
was really
dope.
cool.
So super dope experience. I thought it was great. It was, and again, we were there for a projector shootout, which is another great carrot, right? Like we had
Yeah.
dealers there, we had the competitors set up. We did A and B's of two projection screens, and you'll see the video when I finally figure out how to edit it in a way that makes sense. Besides just gratuitous shots of
Scorsese over here.
well, I mean, I got the part down where where I have Russell do karate moves in front of fun backgrounds and stuff, but the actual meat and content of it is something that I still need to figure out. So that's
I
some
love it.
behind the scenes stuff. But it was a great demo because we saw what an Epson projector looks like next to a Sony projector. We saw what a JVC projector looks like, literally projected next to each other. Okay, you can see for yourself. No fuckery, no settings,
Right.
no hidden mad VR, doing all the
Just out of the
legwork.
box, here's
Yeah.
what you get, right?
And it was great. And like as a dealer event, that's great because if you are a Sony dealer, it gives you a better story to tell, right? So now when you're talking to a client and he's saying, well, my buddy just got this brand X projector for X amount. Why would you want, why should I spend 20 grand or whatever it is on this one? Well, you see, here's the reason that this thing is better than that thing. And it gives you the story to flesh out and everything else. But again, what is a reason to come out? It's not, we hear about the free lunch thing all the time. It's you know, free lunches are great, venues are great.
The term is buffet badger. That's it.
I know a couple of those. There's a few that are around here. The guy who chills out till the very end of the training to try and get himself invited for dinner because he's one of the last three people there. Like we all know that guy. That guy exists in
Mhm.
every territory across the United States.
Sure.
And usually a pretty fun guy and pretty funny
I'll
to
throw you a cocktail or 2 just for carrying some
just
boxes,
just for
trust
your
me.
tenacity for
You
sure.
bet.
Um, but Jason, like what have you seen? Like what's what gets asses in seats or feet through the door?
I've certainly been in the very position that Russell, was in there at the DMPC and trying to lead and host events and trying to come up with creative ways to get butts in seats. Venue is always a key one. And I have to say, like, I had a lot of fun in that role because there was no there was no bar to measure us against. So it was like, where's the chart? Well, there isn't really a mark on the board yet, so you figure out where that bar is. So I take a little bit of personal pride still when I talk to some dealers about the Porsche Experience Center events that we did in Southern California. When you talk about a great mix of location because it's like right there off of the
Right
405
there.
in Torrance, like you can see it as you're driving by, or Carson, I guess it is right there,
Carson,
right?
yeah,
So it's
right
kind
across
of
from the Goodyear blimp. Right
yeah,
there.
exactly. You're kind of like right in the elbow of the 405. So here we are talking about roads in Southern California again. But when you're navigating, it's kind of against traffic for a lot of different from a lot of different directions. Like it's just
Right.
you wouldn't normally be going that way, depending on the time of day that you were going to our event. But that mix of great location, fantastic facility, and then for whatever reason there was a tie-in because Los Angeles is certainly a car crazy market, and a lot of those dealers love cars or know about cars or have clients that are in the Porsche club or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that was a home run. Guys just came to the event just so that they could be in that space. And I had a few guys tell me like, "Hey, I really didn't give this a lot of credence, but you fed everybody and you had all the stuff here and it was a great presentation. Like, can you do this again next year?" So we did it 2 years in a row. And of course, everybody, grunted and groaned and all that. But the reality is it was the mix of great product, a meaningful presentation,
Hmm.
and that X factor is really the venue. And for my money, I think the venue is almost as important as what you're showing. So for people to be able to get into the DMPC, which is normally badges only security guards, and there's
Right, right.
somebody's zillions of dollars worth of intellectual property just around the corner over here. We want to put our guard up and make sure that we're not just letting any, lackey just roll in the door here and run
Right,
amok.
right.
But yeah, I think it's that, it's the style of event, and that damn location is so important to really get butts and seats. I think it's almost as critical as what you're there to see, in many cases.
Well, and so one of our other lines, Lucetta, they decided they're doing a tour and it's Top Golf, right? We did that
Sure.
again. We did that last year. Fuck, I did 3 cities in a row, 3 days
Yeah,
in a
I was
row.
there for 2 of them.
You were there for two of them. We cut a podcast on that from the car. It
Yeah,
was great.
66% of the 100%. I think I was there for that.
That's
Yep.
yeah, and Top Golf went over pretty well. Like it was pretty. We had some pretty good attendance. We had some crap weather because it's the Pacific Northwest, and that's just what you
Yeah,
get.
that last one was a rough one, but we still had people show up.
Absolutely, some of the diehards, and we appreciate them and everything else. But like that seems to be a pretty good one. I did notice some vendors are doing K1. Like we're starting to see more K1 stuff. Go out, race go karts, and then sit through the presentation, that kind of thing. And and I think you're right. I think the venue has a lot to do with it, and I think there's a tie-in for some of these national shows, like where they are, right? So everybody loves going to CEDIA in Denver because Denver's a pretty centrally located city. It's there's a lot of stuff to do. It's got a cool vibe and a cool reputation. Whereas Cedia in Atlanta maybe didn't have the same amount of juice.
Didn't
Nothing
have
against
quite have the
Atlanta.
same didn't have the same panache,
Right.
or pop, as they say today. It wasn't the best logistically planned, CEDIA ever.
Right. And I think that does have a lot to do with it as far as the national thing goes and whatever, like Lightapalooza in Texas this year was it was a little wavy gravy. Weather had everything to do with that. The whole country was
Well,
was
yeah,
under ice and
half of the
snow.
country couldn't fly there,
you
and
know,
it was colder in Dallas than it was in their northern climate anyway, so
right.
it wasn't the escape to the sun that they were hoping it was gonna be.
Right. And the way Lightapalooza, the draw is the education, right? It's not the host city, it's not the hotel that it's at. It's, because believe me, the hotel where it's at is not near a whole lot, right? Like if you want to experience Dallas, this is not the hotel to do it in because everything is miles away. Now, the educational thing, that's great, but like is that a draw? Is that more of a, is there the educational opportunities are typically tailored towards the people who are installing the stuff and the people who are specing the stuff. And those people don't necessarily go to these trips. It's usually,
No, yeah,
maybe it's the
it's the
principal
business
or
owners, it's the principals, right?
right, because it's almost like a quote unquote perk, right? Like this is like, hey man, I put all the risk in here. I'm gonna take a few days off and I'm gonna go to the city and get glad handed and schmoozed by,
Yeah,
whoever
I'm gonna
else.
go to the dinners. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I think that's an important distinction, right? So maybe at regional events, it's more a draw, right? So if it's in your territory as the principal, like maybe you have no problem sending your field techs and your engineers or whatever to something that might be 45 minutes away or an hour away to take that day if it's education focused. If it's just, if you're just sitting through a sales PowerPoint, probably not something that anybody's going to want to do.
Yeah, that brings up just calls to mind, like, the business side of this, right? Like, it's a lot of fun to go to events, it's a lot of fun to take that time and to enrich yourself in a certain way, but, for a lot of these guys, it's like, I built a budget around you earning X amount of dollars in
Right.
X amount of days, and, based on where we're at on the calendar this month, we may not be there, so
Right.
you going to this thing in another city, may not even be practical, even though you are the person that probably should be at this. Me being the principal here, me giving being the guiding light to whatever degree they may or may not be, um, you know, they may not actually be able to take their guy out of the field or gal out of the field to send them to this stuff. So,
Sure.
and I think about being a business owner, like, what does this investment mean to me in terms of how can I draw a line from that to dollars,
Right. Where's my
right? Or
ROI? It's all
what
ROI, right?
and if Kathleen Thomas was listening to this, she knows that's my, like, my unofficial initials when it comes to business investments, and when it comes to trying to plan out my time and my the way that I operate, it's like I'm always looking to make sure that I can maximize that. So, um, maybe I'm projecting a little bit here, but the mind of a small business owner or thinking about integrators from that standpoint, like it's got to be meaningful for me to get these guys out. It's either got to be a replacement maybe for some team building,
Mhm.
know, like, oh,
No,
hey,
that's a fair point. Sure.
here's this wonderful opportunity. These guys have spent the money at a top golfer or whatever, and I can transact a couple of billable hours to getting them out to this. I get them educated. They get some, they get a belly full of beer and some nachos or whatever it
Mhm.
is, and they're swinging clubs or driving go karts or I think I've seen shooting guns. I've seen four wheeling. Seen a lot of different approaches on that one. So, um, I mean, there's probably a factor of that where a guy looking to maximize his dollars can say, "Hey, well, shit, like this could be a replacement for some team builder, or we can make this
Sure.
an unofficial outing for our group."
There's
But yeah,
there are definitely and there are teams that are doing that and they're doing it effectively and it's a popular thing, right? So a lot of guys, a lot of companies that I've run into, they do quarterly team building, right? It's just they park it on the calendar, they budget for it 4 times a year. We're going to do a quarterly team building and whatever that is. And as the in my role as the former like savant guy here in this company, there were a couple of these things that I actually went out to and so that they can justify it, right? Like, so you can justify a day at Top Golf with your team. There's a couple of presentations that they would pack in there, right? Like they would have me come in and talk about, Savant and how to program it and how to do certain things. And then, they would have we had a TV manufacturer, or they had a TV manufacturer come in and talk about settings and mounting and that kind of thing. And then it sort of it can't, it levels itself out, right? So let's appreciate the team, but let's also pull something out of it and get that done. And I think that's a pretty effective way to do it. You may not have the budget to schedule quarterly things, or you may not have a team that's big enough
right.
to schedule quarterly events, but it helps. I mean, even
Well, even a lunch or a dinner with your guys, right? Like I'll have to say this, like I had trades that were, guys that were working for me and stuff like that. I had them many times, I'd show up on a Friday afternoon. I hadn't seen them for days.
Mhm.
I'm like, I hope to God you guys are doing what I'm paying you for. You know what I mean? Like, I'm busy. I'm out here. I'm planting the next row of corn over here for you guys to come out and start to mill and pull out of the ground. So let me show up on a Friday afternoon at lunch. It's Florida. Here's a cooler full of water, or let me make sure you guys have got lunch, or you know and selfishly, of course, I'm doing a check-in, right? Like I look
Right,
like Mr. Good Guy because I'm showing up with lunch, but if you guys are slipping, I'm not going to be super nice about it, right? Like
right.
there's going to be some changes here. But yeah, when we talked about this before we started our recording here, like, what does get them out there? I mean, I think maybe you and I are just kicking this around because I don't think there actually is a one size fits all answer. But
I mean, is
when you
it
think about the rationale for it,
you like to
there's
think
got to be
it's not something as simple and banal as like swag, right? Like nobody's, you like to think that nobody's coming out for t-shirts, but at the same time, if you go out to a thing and there's like,
nothing. Yeah,
nothing,
you're like I didn't even get a shirt.
you're
Yeah, I
gonna
know.
notice, right?
I've
Like,
I've I may have heard or seen some of those comments during previous administrations at Sony. Swag was not something that they focused on. Like it was either way too much garbage that's totally unassociated with what you're doing,
right.
and then you get the aforementioned buffet badgers. They have a silent cousin or maybe another streak that they have running through their body where they like compulsively collect bric-a-brac and garbage that basically,
Right. Right.
like, oh, you've got a bunch of mini LED flashlights. Let me get 15 of those for all of my nieces and nephews for Hanukkah, or for stocking stuffers, or for whatever. And like unapologetically so. Guy even said like, hey, do you have any more of those flashlights? I get some nieces and nephews that I give these away for the holidays. And I was just like,
Are they Sony dealers?
yeah, that was kind of my action. That's kind of my response. I'm like, do they love Sony? Like, oh yeah, they all have PlayStations. I got them
Hmm.
PlayStations. I'm like, you got them or you bought them?
Right. Right.
Not that I care, right? But there's that quotient of people like, oh, maybe there'll be a gizmo or a gadget or a, a tchotchke, as our good friend Mr. Jeff Goldstein would say.
Right.
It's like I agree with you. You hope to God that it's not something as goofy as like, oh, there's going to be a T-shirt, but
I will
I
tell
think it's a
you.
factor to consider
al-
as reality.
Allow me to show you.
Oh yeah. Oh
This
well, you
gets me
haven't
to
seen.
events.
You don't have the little Lucetta
I
whiskey
do.
tumbler, do you? Oh,
It's
you
at
do.
home where I
Okay.
keep the whiskey. It is lovely and so cute. It's very small, but
You don't keep whiskey at the office. I mean,
no,
okay,
no. It
okay.
would
Well,
that would not be a good thing for my career,
anybody.
our company, this podcast. No, 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 no.
Okay. Well,
We
fair
keep that
enough.
one. We
I
keep that
mean,
one home.
you can reserve that for the after hours text at night, the rants. I've been talking to Costco margaritas, and now I'm ready to tell you how I really feel.
Hey, sometimes the margaritas are the only thing that gets you through, baby.
I love you for it, buddy. Just,
But I mean, hey, is that an angle? Like, if you're a dealer, like if there's a place with an open bar, is that going to get you to go? Because that doesn't seem,
that doesn't seem like the right fit, or
nah,
probably not the association that most of our vendors would want, right? Like, I think it depends on the lane that you run in.
right.
Electronics, luxury, wine, food, liquor, nice
Sure.
cars, watches, they're all, in the Venn diagram, they all kind of overlap.
Right.
Um, you know,
Maybe not getting
hard,
shit faced. Not,
yeah, yeah, getting completely blammered. And driving, are those two should not overlap, right? I mean, not that it doesn't ever happen, but
no, right.
it's not something that you should be shooting for.
There's definitely, I mean, I think everybody's got some story about where, they were, it wasn't them, but they were adjacent to somebody who maybe had a little bit too much at a trade show,
Oh man.
at a thing, at a,
Uh,
you know,
there is a behind the paywall podcast. Write that down. Let's talk about some
yeah.
guys that really put their foot in it.
Oh,
What shall we say? Because yeah, I've been party to that a couple of times, even in some roles post Sony, pre rep life, where guys showed up and it's like, oh, it's open bar, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, kind of. Well, let me get four fingers of the Glenlivet
right.
24. What do you think? And let me do another lap of that before you've even ordered appetizers, and the bill's $300 already. you know, you tend to wonder what people are doing in their regular day to days at home.
The one that stands out to me was an event that I was at. It was in San Diego. It was for a manufacturer. It was like a dealer appreciation thing. They flew in dealers from across the country to come to this thing, and there were a couple, there were a couple guys who maybe it was their first time at something like this or whatever, and they just absolutely took advantage of it to a staggering degree, and that was the story throughout the whole thing. Like these guys, hey, did you see that guy throw up here? Did you see that guy almost fall over the railing? Like, did you see that? Yeah, this guy was collapsed on the floor, and I had to step over him to get in the elevator. Like, and that was the story, right? So, hey, again,
Oh,
maybe another reason why it's principles, and
right. Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it's funny. That's exactly kind of where I was going with kind of watching out what you guys are doing. You're going to send somebody to represent you
that's the key.
off to an
Yep.
event, to another city, potentially overnight, whatever that looks like, or even in town.
Yep.
Like, these guys are here to represent me. Like, I want to make sure that whoever's going to that event isn't going to never act like they've never been there before. What
Right.
what you were just describing reminded me of my very first trip to Cedia, and being wined and dined by the folks at Klipsch. Man, they put on a spread, right? Like, it's in Union Station at right in downtown Indianapolis, where it's all of this history and these really cool vignettes and great food and open bar.
Yep.
And of course, I'm 20 something at that point, and had never been there before. And I'm like, hey, I'm Irish. I can hang.
Sure.
Oh, dude, I lost my soul.
I feel like everybody who's ever been to one of these things has that or multiple versions of that story, right? Like there's absolutely oh man, this guy, he was, and I'm just going to use this name for example, right? Oh yeah, I saw this guy at the Lutron party. He was pounding it. He was going crazy. And then, I ended up flying back home on the same flight as him the next day, and he was really in a bad way.
Yeah, he was green the
Oof.
whole flight home.
I feel like everybody's heard, everybody's got a story like that. Or, yeah, I was I was coming back from whatever, and yeah, I saw this guy stumbling the other direction. I don't know where he was going, but he's not from here. It's,
Right.
oh, okay. That's and I mean it behooves, and this is just maybe the mama duck in me, the ex business owner in me. But like if you're gonna go out to one of these events, and there are a lot of folks, there's a lot of big companies who take a big pool of technicians out to CEDIA with them. A lot of people in the organization, and it's great because it's rewarding. It's a nice, it's a nice thing, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
they're showing up and it's like, "Look at my team. Look at how badass we
Exactly.
are."
And that's a great thing because again, it rewards the guys who are down there doing the work, and it makes your company look great, and it really, makes you look good to a lot of the vendors that you're going to meet with and that sort of thing. I would advise you to have a meeting ahead of time to lay out the seediest strategies, right? Like it's just, common sense things like you will be representing this
Yeah, you're gonna
company.
be good if you got my shirt on,
Right.
you represent me. Any of the events or any of the parties that we go to, you represent us. So we expect you to enjoy yourself,
Yep.
and we expect you to mix and mingle and conversate and learn and network and all of those things.
Keep your head.
Yeah, I don't expect you to be, ripping Keeblers in the bathroom with some crazy person that you just met, your new best friends coming up with a business plan. We don't expect you to be chugging, top shelf,
Right.
Macallan at,
Right.
$100 a glass or whatever it is.
Right.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that is, out of all of this, that's a great point.
Don't get any
To
tattoos.
well, I mean,
If you
if you
find
work for
your
Origin, it's part of the program. You're gonna get one of those, but,
if you find
um,
yourself with these people, don't get
yeah, watch
that.
out. Stay away from tattoo parlors because you could
Right.
be in trouble. They'll buy it for you. That's the thing.
That is, I know. It's
Mark Fisher will pay for the tattoo
absolutely.
and unapologetically do it, and good for him, right? Like, hey, I
Sure.
got another one. I got another guy on the team, so he's invested.
It is a great
So,
gimmick for sure. There's no doubt in my mind why you would get a tattoo of any manufacturer is
hey, you know
odd to
what?
me, but great, man. It's working. Awesome.
Yeah, buy that placement. I'm with it. As long as you're not buying it on bad people, then I guess there's something to be said for like where the billboard goes.
Yeah,
But
sure.
you look at their logo, and it's like, what is that? There's a conversation. So there actually is like a brilliant strategy, kind of like hidden in a tattoo.
It's a conversation starter that you're gonna have for a lot longer than that company exists. And
Well,
okay.
maybe who knows? Time is not over yet, so we'll see.
No. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anywho, but yeah,
Yeah.
man, we got way off track here.
We got in the weeds, but we're recording a week before a week of travel. Like you've got your follow up from the projector shootout. For me, I've got two vendor trips in 2 weeks in a row. So I'll be hitting the Rep Summit event for Lucetta, which is going to be always great because we get together with our
Reno.
counterparts from around the country in Reno. There is I saw the itinerary for it. There is a trip to something called the Old Fashioned Factory.
Hmm,
My, I know that's based on our recent trip to Dallas, something that you're near and dear to your heart.
near and dear, baby.
And then to end that trip, I'll actually get a chance to get out to Minden, Nevada, and go and see the James Loudspeaker Factory, which it's not like it's a giant facility or anything like that, but to get a look at what the wizards out there in Minden are up to with the wood shop and all of the stuff that they
It's
build over there.
it's a cool place, and it's if you like extruded aluminum, this is your Disneyland
Oh, dude, I
coming up.
can't wait. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
I
We're
would I
gonna
would
be
highly suggest you. I don't know where you're staying around there. There's not a whole lot of places to stay in
It's the
Minden.
pepper mill.
No, no, no.
It's
I'm talking about in Minden or whatever.
I'll be driving to and from. There'll be
Ah,
no overnight in Minden.
just
It's
just
it's
making
about
sure.
yeah, I think it's like a dinner and an hour or I think it's like an hour at the factory and a dinner or
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
cool.
So
The
yeah.
if you're ever there again for recreation, the Genoa Thirst Parlor is Nevada's
Oh, you mentioned
oldest.
that. Yeah, you sent me that. So
It
I'm gonna
is
have to maybe figure out if Brian can take us to the thirst parlor while we're
it's
in Minden.
it's straight out of Deadwood, bro. It is
Oh, I'm excited
straight
now.
out of Deadwood. It is like the only thing it's missing is the double flap doors
Oh, will
that
Al
you
Swearingen be there with a bunch of whores?
exactly. That's
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
I mean, if that's what you're, hey,
When I think of Deadwood, that's all I think about is that guy cursing, and like just the open, just the sewer of what humanity must have been
it's
like.
fantastic. Just the most eloquent curse word user ever
Oh,
in any TV show ever.
Shakespearean levels
Fantastic.
of curse word delivery.
Just the best. Oh, woo, man,
Whoa,
drowning
you
on
all
my old
right?
yeah, I have my old fashioned over here. Hey,
Yeah,
listen,
okay.
when you're at Lucetta, if they have an intermediate size to this limited
Oh,
edition,
if there's a way that, I can talk to if I can actually catch Cam, speeding by real fast, I'll see if he's got any extra swag that he can kick down, but,
yeah,
yeah, then following that, I get to go down to the Sonance Experience Center the week after, so,
yeah,
the next couple of weeks of travel, are gonna be good, illuminating, exciting, get to see lots of our friends, learn about some new product, um, as just as an aside, looking at some of that new stuff um, from Sonance that's coming out with the powered soundbar and those little SPL amps
yeah,
and
man.
some of that stuff. Like I'm pretty jazzed about what the future looks like for that partnership. So
Some good stuff coming.
selfishly, yeah, selfishly, if you're in the AV space and you listen to us, check out what Sonance dropped at ISE with those new product announcements.
Yeah,
Going to be a pretty solid partner to be looking at going forward if you're in the AV space, regardless of where you land on this podcast or where you're listening to it from. I'd be looking to reach out to whoever our Sonance reps are and find out what that's about.
cool. Glad we're on a pirate ship.
Hey, listen,
Yeah,
they earned it.
sure.
I'm
Nah,
excited because they're paying for my trip to SoCal, so I can talk about it later.
yeah, nothing against them. Just everybody tuning out and going to the next podcast.
Hey,
But
I don't care.
yeah, I think the takeaways here are, if you want to get feet in the door, asses in the seats, unique venue,
Yep,
uh, masterful content, good
good
stuff, good
content, a
value.
reason to show up there. It's got to be something like if it's just listen to somebody talk at the front of the room or read off a PowerPoint. mm,
That's key.
no dice.
All right, and with that, I don't think I have anything to add to that, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.